At 9:23 a.m. on June 14, 2025, the USS Princeton, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, was conducting a freedom of navigation patrol in the South China Sea. On the surface, it was a routine mission, an American ship sailing through international waters, enforcing the principle that no nation owns the sea. But within minutes, this patrol would escalate into one of the tensest encounters in recent naval history. The Princeton's powerful SPY-1 radar picked up something unusual, a Chinese Type 052D destroyer accelerating rapidly. The ship had been loitering 200 kilometers away, but now it surged from 18 knots to 30 knots in under 90 seconds. On board the Princeton, the Combat Information Center lit up with alerts. Unknown to the Americans, the Chinese captain had just received orders straight from Beijing. Intercept the Americans, force them to yield, and show the world that China ruled these waters. But Beijing had overlooked one very important lesson. Challenging the U.S. Navy in open water has never gone well for anyone. The strategic background. The South China Sea is no ordinary patch of ocean. It's the beating heart of global trade, carrying more than $3.4 trillion worth of goods every single year. Oil, gas, electronics, food supplies, all pass through these sea lanes. International law guarantees freedom of navigation, and the U.S. Navy has safeguarded that right for decades. For China, however, controlling these waters has become a central ambition. Artificial islands bristling with runways, radar stations, and missile systems now dot the sea, each one a physical reminder of Beijing's growing claims. But those claims directly clash with international law and the rights of other nations. The USS Princeton's patrol that morning wasn't just a military mission, it was a message, the first moves. By 9:26, radar operators on the Princeton had positively identified the contact, a Type 052D destroyer, one of China's most modern warships. The threat assessment was marked moderate to high. At her current speed and heading, she would be within missile range in just 17 minutes. The Chinese destroyer's YJ-18 anti-ship missiles were powerful, capable of sprinting toward a target at supersonic speeds. But the Princeton wasn't defenseless. Her own arsenal included SM-6 interceptors with a range of 240 nautical miles, designed to swat enemy missiles and aircraft like flies. The tactical action officer calmly briefed the captain. The recommendation was clear: prepare for general quarters. But the captain of the Princeton, reflecting American naval confidence, gave a different order. Let's see how badly they want to embarrass themselves first. This wasn't arrogance, it was discipline. U.S. Navy officers are trained to avoid escalation, but remain ready to end a fight within seconds if required. The bigger picture. The USS Princeton wasn't alone. She was part of the legendary Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, a formation of warships centered around the nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz. Together, the group represented unmatched naval firepower. Destroyers, cruisers, and submarines formed a protective shield, while the carrier itself held more than 90 combat-ready aircraft. Within seconds, the strike group's cooperative engagement capability linked every radar, every sensor, and every weapon system into one giant, floating supercomputer of war. The Chinese ship wasn't just facing the Princeton, she was staring down the combined might of the entire strike group. By 9:30, the USS Nimitz adjusted flight operations, while destroyers like USS Chunghun and USS Kidd shifted to defensive positions. It was a chessboard in motion, every piece sliding into place with flawless coordination. Escalation from the air. At 9:35, things escalated further. The E-2D Hawkeye, an airborne radar aircraft circling 25,000 feet above the fleet, detected multiple aircraft launching from the Chinese carrier Shandong. The radar signatures matched J-15 fighters, climbing aggressively and heading south. But almost immediately, American controllers noticed something odd. The J-15s were struggling for altitude. Because China's carrier relied on a ski jump system instead of catapults, its aircraft couldn't launch at full weight. They had to carry less fuel and fewer weapons. In short, they were already handicapped before the fight even began. Adding to the picture, sonar operators on the Princeton detected an underwater contact, likely a Chinese diesel-electric submarine. But instead of gliding silently through the depths, it was noisy and careless, broadcasting its location like a truck driving down a gravel road. The Chinese plan was clear, a coordinated show of force from surface ships, submarines, and aircraft. But their execution was sloppy, and against the U.S. Navy, sloppiness is fatal. The American response. At 9:37 a.m., the USS Nimitz's flight deck came alive. FA-18E. Super Hornets thundered off the catapults in precise 45-second intervals, a rhythm that only American carriers have perfected. Steam poured from the catapults, and within minutes, the skies above the carrier group filled with American fighters. These weren't just aircraft. They were flying computers. Their advanced ASA radars could track dozens of targets at once, and thanks to Link 16 data sharing, every pilot had the same picture of the battle. Chinese pilots, on the other hand, relied on outdated voice commands and limited radar, forcing them to fly close together just to coordinate. Adding to the imbalance were EA-18G Growlers, electronic warfare aircraft armed with jamming pods. From more than 100 miles away, they scrambled Chinese radar screens, creating phantom targets and breaking missile locks. To the Chinese pilots, it seemed as though American jets were multiplying in the sky, testing American patience. At 9:47, the Chinese destroyer made its boldest move yet. Her powerful phased array radar stopped scanning and locked directly onto the USS Nimitz. In naval terms, this was the equivalent of pointing a loaded gun at someone's head. But once again, the American response was calm. Fire control solutions were updated instantly, but the U.S. ships didn't fire. They simply documented every detail, bearing, range, and radar signature for future reference. Restraint didn't mean weakness, it meant discipline. Meanwhile, in the skies, one J-15 pilot attempted an aggressive maneuver, diving dangerously close to an American Super Hornet. But the American pilot, trained at the Navy's Top Gun school, simply flipped inverted and slipped behind the Chinese jet within seconds. For 3 heart-stopping moments, he had a perfect missile shot lined up, but he didn't fire. Professionalism held the line. The submarine's mistake. By 9:51, the Chinese submarine made its own critical error. To recharge its batteries, it raised its snorkel. Instantly, sonar operators on the Princeton locked onto its position with pinpoint accuracy. What the submarine captain didn't know was that he had been tracked for nearly an hour already. Had this been war, his life expectancy at that moment would have been about 12 seconds, the time it would take for an American ass-rock torpedo to end his mission permanently. The final demonstration. By early afternoon, the Americans decided it was time to send a message. At 14:30, the USS Nimitz launched nearly 50 aircraft in a massive show of force, the largest in years. The skies darkened with Super Hornets, Growlers, and Hawkeyes. Electronic warfare blanketed the region. Chinese radar screens lit up with hundreds of ghost contacts, real aircraft vanishing and reappearing like phantoms. The Shandong's controllers were overwhelmed, unable to tell what was real and what wasn't. And then came the most shocking moment. A U.S. Virginia-class attack submarine, which had been silently shadowing the Chinese formation for over a week, suddenly surfaced just 6 nautical miles from the Chinese carrier. For 90 unforgettable seconds, the black hull of the submarine gleamed in the afternoon sun before sliding back beneath the waves. The message was crystal clear. "We've been here the whole time. You never had a chance." The withdrawal. By 1623, the Chinese carrier group began its retreat. Official state media would later claim the mission had been a successful training exercise. But everyone knew the truth. China had come to intimidate. Instead, they had been humiliated, outflown, outmaneuvered, and outclassed at every level. The South China Sea remained what it had always been: open water, safeguarded by the world's most powerful navy. This encounter was more than just a near clash between warships. China came to challenge American resolve. Instead, it got a lesson in humility. If you found this story of high seas tension fascinating, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more gripping stories about history, military power, and the events shaping our world today.